The walnut-paneled conference room looked like it belonged in a law drama. Sleek, cold, expensive. Bottled water lined the credenza, untouched. Leather chairs groaned under old names and polite grudges. But the pit in my stomach didn't care how polished the table was. My sister Claire sat across from me in a cream blazer, not even trying to hide her grin. You'd think someone had just handed her a bouquet, not summoned her to read our father's will. And me? I still had his wedding ring in my coat pocket. Dad died on a Monday. I remember because I got the call at work and spilled coffee all over my shirt trying to answer. The nurse's voice was calm. He passed in his sleep, she said. Peaceful. He'd been in hospice 3 weeks. We all knew it was coming, but I hadn't expected the silence after. The kind of silence that doesn't just settle in your apartment. It lives there, sits with you at the kitchen table, waits behind the door. Quiet grief is its own kind of parasite. Claire and I hadn't spoken much in the weeks leading up to it. Just logistics, rotating visits, medication pickups. Her texts were always clipped, practical. No warmth, just updates. She was always that way. Efficient, polished, a human spreadsheet. If I was the one who remembered the story behind each framed photo in Dad's den, Claire was the one who alphabetized his pill bottles. The will reading was scheduled for the Friday after the funeral. That gave us 4 days of hollow arrangements. I stayed in the guest room at Dad's house. Claire stayed at a Marriott 15 minutes away. It's easier, she said. More private. What she meant was less messy, less history, less of me. The funeral itself was small. Closed casket, minimal flowers, just enough people to fill the first 4 rows. I gave the eulogy because Claire didn't want to. She stood there, composed, while I choked on the word goodbye. I caught her glancing at her watch halfway through. Still, I thought we'd get through the will reading like adults. Thought maybe we'd sit across that glossy table, say a quiet thank you, and move on. I didn't expect her to smile before the lawyer even opened his briefcase. Michael Dennison had been our father's attorney for years. Gray hair, silk tie, the kind of calm voice that could explain bankruptcy like it was weather. He nodded at us like we were meeting for brunch. Thank you both for coming, he said, setting down a slim leather folder. Before we begin, I want to say how deeply sorry I am for your loss. Your father was a good man. Claire gave a soft, practiced smile, the kind you see on political spouses. Let's proceed, she said, already leaning forward. I stayed quiet. My palms were damp against the chair arms. I kept thinking of the last time I saw Dad, 2 days before he passed. He was barely responsive, but when I mentioned Claire, his fingers twitched. His lips moved like he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Now I sat there, waiting to hear what he never got the strength to tell me. Michael began reading. It was standard stuff at first. Debts, accounts, small bequests. The house was to be sold. The car, donated. Then came the division of assets. To my daughter, Clara Annette Reynolds, Michael read, I leave the entirety of my investment portfolio and the contents of the lockbox at Centennial Bank. Claire didn't hide her reaction. She inhaled, just slightly, and her lips curved. Not smug, not overt. But if you knew her, you saw it. She thought she'd won. I felt it before I heard it. The shift. Michael's voice changed, just a notch, like he was reading a part he hadn't expected. He cleared his throat. And to my son, Jacob Thomas Reynolds, he continued, eyes flicking up briefly, I leave the remainder of my estate, including a final clause to be read in his presence only. Claire blinked. What clause? She asked, the smile faltering. Michael folded his hands. It's a sealed addendum. Your father requested it be disclosed to Jacob privately at the end of this meeting. Silence. Real silence this time. Claire's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was too busy replaying Dad's last look. That twitch of his fingers. That unspoken sentence. The meeting ended 10 minutes later. Claire tried to mask her agitation with small talk, but she fumbled. She knocked her purse over when she stood. Didn't say goodbye. Michael waited until the door clicked shut behind her before turning to me. I wasn't sure if this part would ever come, he said quietly. Your father was deliberate. He opened the briefcase again, pulled out a smaller envelope, handwritten, sealed in wax. My name was on the front, Jake. Not Jacob, just Jake. The name Dad used when we were close, before everything fractured. I took it with shaking hands. Read it, Michael said, and then we'll talk. I broke the seal. The letter inside was short, a single page. My father's handwriting was shakier than I remembered, but still legible, still his. Jake, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Claire's already smiling, don't worry. I planned for that. There's something she never knew. Something you need to see. Go to the workshop. Check behind the third beam, left corner. You'll understand soon. Love. Dad. I stared at the paper. The words blurred slightly. The workshop? The house still had Dad's old shed behind the garage. He used to build furniture there, long before his arthritis got bad. We hadn't touched it in years. I looked up at Michael. What's behind the beam? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know. Your father gave strict instructions not to touch anything. Said it was yours to find. That night, I drove back to the house in silence. The sky was bruised purple, clouds low and heavy. The air smelled like cut grass and something older, like wet wood and time. I unlocked the back door. The house creaked the same way it always had. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Just grabbed the flashlight from the utility drawer and headed out to the workshop. It took a few tries to get the old padlock open. The metal was rusted, reluctant. Inside, everything smelled of sawdust and old varnish. I aimed the flashlight toward the left corner. Third beam. It wasn't obvious at first, just another plank of wood. But when I ran my fingers along the edge, I felt the seam barely there. I wedged the claw of an old hammer underneath. Pulled. The beam gave way with a dry groan. Behind it was a box. Not a safe, not anything fancy, just a plain wooden box with a metal latch. I opened it. Inside was a stack of papers, legal-looking, yellowed with age. On top, a photo. My father, my mother, and a man I didn't recognize. I picked up the first sheet, and the headline made my stomach twist. Finalized adoption agreement. Claire Annette Reynolds. The paper felt brittle at the edges, soft like something too often handled or long forgotten. I held it by the corner, careful not to smudge the print, even though my fingers had started to sweat. Somewhere between the garage door and this moment, the air had changed. The shed was cooler than I remembered. Cool like a basement, like something sealed off. But it wasn't the chill that made me shiver. It was the name printed across the top line. Claire Annette Reynolds. Adopted. January 1989. Legal guardians, Thomas Reynolds and Margaret Reynolds. I just stared at it. Adopted. There was a time when Claire and I had matching baby albums, her with her strawberry curls, and me with my straight black mop. I remembered our mom making fun of our gap-toothed smiles at Christmas. I remembered Claire learning how to braid my friendship bracelets tighter than I could. I remembered fights over bathroom time in high school, the mirror fogged, her eyeliner smudged, me trying to get to class. I never, not once, thought she wasn't my biological sister. I flipped to the next page. Another photo was paperclipped to the top, this one older, grainy, a hospital hallway in the background, a woman, dark hair, thinner face, holding a baby. Dad stood next to her, visibly younger, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't Mom. The paperwork underneath told the rest. Claire's birth mother, Julia Hartwell. Termination of parental rights, December 1988. Adoptive mother, Margaret Reynolds. Step adoption following marriage in 1991. Sealed record until subject's 25th birthday, with option to unseal for medical or legal reasons. The details swam. I put the papers down, sat back on the workbench stool. My knee bumped the vice grip. Something clattered in the back, but I didn't care. Dad had adopted Claire when she was a baby. Mom came into the picture later, but they raised her, us, like nothing was different. Why did he hide it until now? Why leave it to me? I didn't sleep that night. I lay on Dad's old recliner, with the box open beside me. The papers were in a neat pile. I reread them until the sentences turned into static. Morning crawled in gray and slow. By 7, the birds outside had started up, like they hadn't gotten the memo that someone's life just cracked open. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand. Texted Claire. Me. Can we meet? Claire. Busy today. Why? Me. It's important. Something Dad left. Claire. I already got my part. Me. It's not about the money. Claire. Then what? Me. Just coffee. Noon? That cafe you like. Park and Pine. She didn't reply right away. I rinsed my mug twice before she finally responded. Claire. Fine, 12 sharp. I got there early. The place was half full. Moms with strollers, laptops propped open, the hiss of steamed milk cutting through quiet indie music. Claire walked in right at noon, heels clicking, cream blazer again, hair tied back, flawless. She looked like she was coming from a commercial shoot for trust funds. She didn't sit right away. What's this about? She asked, bag still on her shoulder. I motioned to the seat. Just sit, please. She lowered herself slowly, like the chair might give out. I slid the adoption file across the table, slow and flat, like a poker hand I didn't want to throw down. She stared at it, didn't touch it. What is this? You tell me, I said. She picked up the top page, eyes scanning, fast at first, then slower. She stopped at the photo. Her face didn't change much, just a slight twitch at the jaw. You went through Dad's things. He told me to. When? In the will. There was a sealed clause. He left it to me. Claire blinked. Her hands tightened around the page like she might crumple it. He had no right. It's about you, I said quietly. I think you deserve to know. No. Her voice went sharp. This is ancient. This has nothing to do with anything now. I leaned back. Let her talk. I grew up in that house just like you, she said. I changed his IVs. I dealt with the estate lawyer. I buried him. You also smiled before the will was even read. Claire's expression cracked for the briefest second. A flicker of guilt? Resentment? I couldn't tell. You think this changes something? She snapped. Because legally it doesn't. My name's on the account. The lawyer read it. That's it. I nodded slowly. But emotionally, I said. It might mean everything. She scoffed. You're looking for some moral victory? Some gotcha moment? I didn't know, Jake. I didn't know I was adopted. I believed her. That's what made it worse. We didn't talk much after that. She left the cafe without touching her coffee. I stayed behind, watching the condensation build on my glass. I didn't know what to feel. Not anger. Not exactly. More like disorientation. We'd spent decades in the same rooms, same holidays, same photo albums. How could this piece of paper suddenly redraw the lines? I called Michael Dennison that afternoon. "Did you know?" I asked. "I did," he said, "but your father made me promise. He said the time would come, and only then." "Why now?" There was a pause. "Because the investment account isn't the real inheritance, Pa," he said. "What do you mean?" "There's another clause, another account, but it's not listed in the main will." I waited. Michael cleared his throat. "Your father transferred ownership of a private trust 5 years ago. It wasn't declared in probate. It's in your name, activated upon verification of clause receipt." "A trust?" "Substantial," he said, "and personal. It includes letters, journals, a detailed record of his decisions." I sat down hard on the kitchen stool. "Where is it?" He gave me the name of a financial firm, one I'd never heard of, along with a key code and appointment time. Monday, 10 a.m. Sunday passed in a blur. I tried to go about things normally. Laundry, dishes, even a half-hearted attempt to clean out the fridge. But every time I passed the hallway, I'd glance toward Dad's study. The door was closed. Still smelled like leather and pipe tobacco and old books. I opened one drawer, found a post-it note in his handwriting. "Don't trust what people say. Trust what they repeat." I stared at it for a long time. Monday morning, I took the elevator to the 7th floor of a high-rise I didn't belong in. Marble floors, recessed lighting, water coolers that looked like sculptures. The receptionist led me to a small conference room. A man in a charcoal suit greeted me with a file already open. "Jacob Reynolds?" he asked. "Yes." "Your father left instructions that you were to receive this material personally. No digital access. Hard copy only." He slid a manila folder across the table. Thick. Heavy. "Inside," he said, "you'll find documentation, statements, and a series of handwritten letters. Some are to you, some are to Claire. There's also a sealed envelope labeled for her, in your custody." I blinked. "For me to give her? That was your father's request." I took the folder. My hands shook. The man stood. "You have the room," he said. "Take your time." I opened it, and the first thing I saw was my mother's handwriting. Not Margaret Reynolds, Julia Hartwell. Inside the folder, beneath a dated letter with Claire's name in the header, was a full, typed journal entry written by her biological mother. And what it said? It started like this: "If you're reading this, Claire, it means the truth finally found you. I loved you. I never stopped. But I made a choice. And now I need you to know why." It was 9:43 on a Monday when I realized everything Claire knew about her life had been, at best, half a truth. The kind of truth that lives in parentheses, technically correct, but only if you don't look too close. I sat alone in the financial firm's quiet conference room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the folder spread open like a wound. In my hands was a letter from a woman neither Claire nor I had ever met. But she was her mother. Not the woman who raised her, the one who gave her away. And somehow, our father had held on to her words for decades, waiting for this. I started reading. "Claire, I never wanted to let you go, but I had to. When I was 19, I made a choice I've questioned every day since. You were a quiet baby, stared more than you cried. Your father was older, married, with a job that mattered more than I did. He said I could keep you, but only if I kept you hidden. I couldn't do that. So when Thomas Reynolds came into the picture, when he said he could give you a life better than I ever could, I let you go. I asked for one thing, that someday you'd be allowed to know. If you're reading this, he kept his promise. I don't ask for forgiveness, only understanding. Julia. I put the letter down and stared out the window. The city looked sterile from 7 floors up, neat rows of gray rooftops and distant traffic. I wondered how long Dad had kept this, where he kept it, if he'd ever planned to tell Claire while he was still alive. The rest of the folder was dense. Financial statements, investment summaries, property titles I didn't recognize. At the bottom was a smaller envelope, cream-colored, sealed and labeled, Claire, from Dad. To be delivered only if you choose to, not when, if. He left it to me, not to the lawyer, not to a safe deposit box, to me. I tucked it into the inside pocket of my jacket and closed the folder. Claire didn't return my texts that week. After the cafe, things had gone silent, but I couldn't stop thinking about that letter or the question it raised, why didn't he ever tell her? More than that, why now? I went back to the house, spent 2 nights sleeping in Dad's recliner again. The place was too quiet, too unchanged. His shoes were still lined up by the door. His checkbook sat next to the phone. There was a voicemail blinking that I couldn't bring myself to play. The envelope in my coat felt heavier with each passing day. Wednesday afternoon, I called her, straight to voicemail. I hesitated. Then I left a message. Claire, it's me. I know you're probably not ready to talk, but I have something of Dad's for you. I don't know if you want it, but if you do, if you even want to hear about it, I'm here. I didn't hear back that night, but the next morning, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Claire standing there, arms crossed, hair pulled into a tight knot, eyes red like she hadn't slept. "Let me in," she said. She walked past me like it was still her house. I closed the door gently behind her. She didn't sit, just turned to face me. "I don't want another surprise," she said. "Just give it to me." I hesitated. "It's not just a letter, I said. "It's from your birth mother. There's context. I think you should sit down." Claire stared at me. Something in her jaw tensed. "You read it?" I nodded. "Then don't make me sit. Just hand it over." I reached into my coat and gave her the envelope. She took it carefully, fingers trembling for the first time in I don't know how long. She didn't open it, just stared at her name in Dad's handwriting. "This doesn't change anything, Jake," she said. "I'm still his daughter." "I know," I said. "I never said you weren't." She looked up, startled, like she expected a fight, maybe even needed one. "I know what it looks like, so," she said, smiling at the will reading. I wasn't gloating. I didn't respond. Claire glanced down again at the envelope. "I thought he picked me. I thought, for once, I wasn't the one left out." "You weren't." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You have the trust, the journals, the truth. What do I have?" "You have this, I said, nodding toward the letter. "And maybe something you didn't expect." She opened the envelope slowly. I watched her face as she read. It didn't change much at first, but when she hit the line about Julia choosing to let her go, her lips parted slightly, her hands lowered, her shoulders dropped. "I always thought she just left," she said quietly. I nodded. "She didn't." Claire sat down finally, on the edge of the old couch. The letter dangled from her hand. "You know what I used to tell myself?" she said. "That maybe I was so easy to raise because I didn't come with any baggage. No tantrums, no attitude, just compliant." "Claire, you weren't—" "Let me finish," she said, voice level. "I think I've been trying to earn a seat at the table for years, even when I had one." That hit harder than I expected. She folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. "What now?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. We talked a little after that. Not much, not enough. She left quietly. But the next morning, she called me. "I found something," she said. "What do you mean?" "In the lockbox, the one Dad left me." I waited. "There's another key," she said, "to a safety deposit box in Mom's name, one I didn't know about." "Mom's?" She nodded even though I couldn't see her. "And get this, there's a post-it note. It just says, 'Claire's questions live here.'" I froze. You going?" She paused. "I want you to come with me." The bank was across town. Claire wore sunglasses and a wool coat. I had the folder under my arm. We signed in, passed security, and were led to a small private room. The box was long and narrow. Claire used the key, turned it, and pulled it out slowly. Inside were only 3 things: a jewelry box, a cassette tape, and a photo album. Claire picked up the tape first. It was labeled in thick Sharpie, "Margaret, Confession." She looked at me, eyes wide. "Do you think—" "I don't know," I said. "We'll need a tape player." She nodded slowly, then opened the jewelry box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a locket. She opened it. On one side, a photo of baby Claire. On the other, a note, folded tiny, almost unreadable. She passed it to me. I unfolded it. It said, "I named her Clara. You called her Claire. Either way, please protect her." It was signed, Julia. Halfway through rewinding the cassette tape with a pencil, I realized I'd been holding my breath. The plastic wheels turned slower than I remembered from childhood. Claire sat across from me at the dining table, elbows on her knees, the photo album unopened beside her. "Do you even have a tape player?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I've got Dad's old one," I said, nodding toward the den. We'd brought everything back from the bank: necklace, tape, photo album, even the deposit box key, and dumped it all on the table like we were detectives on the verge of solving a cold case. Except the mystery wasn't who did it. It was why. I slotted the cassette into the tape deck, the kind that clicked when it locked in, with faint static before any sound. Claire leaned forward. I pressed play. It started with the soft click of a mic being tested, then her voice. "Margaret Reynolds, our mother. If you're listening to this, well, I suppose it means I'm gone, and Thomas followed instructions better than I thought." Claire's spine straightened. "This isn't about guilt. I don't regret raising you, Claire. I regret the lie, the one we kept, the one I insisted on keeping quiet." Claire's hands trembled slightly. She didn't look at me. "Your birth mother, Julia, asked for one thing, truth, when the time was right. And I couldn't do it. Because part of me feared you'd love her more, that knowing you were given away, even for the right reasons, would plant a root of resentment I couldn't dig out." There was a pause, a faint exhale. "But you deserved more than silence. And Jake, if you're there too, I'm sorry for putting this burden on you. You always asked questions when you were little, always noticed the things others missed." The words hit like small stones. "Your father was a good man, not perfect, but he loved you both. The trust he left, that was his way of giving you each something different. Claire, he gave you structure, foundation. Jake, he gave you the keys to the past." The tape clicked softly again. And if you're hearing this, then I hope, maybe, you're finally sitting at the same table again. Then silence. The tape stopped. Claire didn't speak right away. She just stared at the table, her hands folded around the edges of the album like she wasn't ready to open it. I waited. "She recorded that before she got sick," Claire said finally. "She must have." "Sounds like it, I said. "She kept it all this time." I nodded. "And Dad knew." Claire looked up. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but dry. So why didn't he tell me while he was alive? Why wait until the will? I thought about it. I think he didn't want to take the risk about, I said. Maybe he knew you wouldn't believe it if it came from him. But if you found it yourself, on your terms, it might actually land. Claire gave a small, bitter laugh. He planned it like a puzzle. Yeah, I said, but not one of those fun ones. More like the kind where pieces are missing and you only realize what the picture is after it's too late. She opened the album. The first page was a photo of Claire as a toddler, holding a wooden spoon in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other. Her curls were wild, her cheeks flushed. I'd seen the photo before, but now it had a different weight. Next to it, a caption in neat handwriting, Claire's second birthday. Julia sent the bear. Claire stared at it like it might blink. She was sending gifts, she said quietly. Looks like it. We flipped through the album. Birthday cards with unfamiliar signatures, notes tucked into the corners. To Clara, with love. Tiny handwriting, carefully preserved. Claire's mouth tightened. She was watching, she said, all these years. And Mom never told you. She wanted me to think I was hers completely. You were, I said, in every way that mattered. Claire didn't respond. She just closed the album. Do you want to meet her? I asked gently. I don't even know if she's alive. We could try to find out. Claire was quiet for a moment, then softly, not yet. We sat in the living room that night and didn't talk much. She stayed over, in her old room, which still had posters from when she was 14, back when she liked indie bands and used to paint little vines along the windowsill. I sat up late in Dad's recliner, flipping through his old journals from the trust folder. Some were dry, financial notes, project sketches, but others were personal. In one entry, dated October 1993, he wrote, Claire cried herself to sleep last night, said she didn't feel like she belonged. I wanted to tell her the truth. Margaret said not yet. Maybe I'm a coward, but God help me. I love her like my own. And another from 2002. Jake asked me why Claire doesn't look like anyone on Mom's side. I changed the subject. He always notices the cracks. That line stayed with me. The next morning, Claire joined me on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. The air was cool and dry. One of those rare golden fall mornings when the leaves don't crunch yet, just rustle softly. Do you remember the summer trip to Michigan? She asked. Which one? The one where you got sunburned and I laughed until Mom made me rub aloe on your shoulders. I smiled. Yeah, I remember. I asked Dad if we were poor because we stayed in that old cabin with no AC. He said, we're not poor, we're smart. Air conditioning makes you weak. We both laughed. Claire took a sip of her coffee. I think I needed this, she said. This? I asked. The whole damn mess. The letter, the photos, the trust, the locket, even the lawyer. I waited. I needed to know I wasn't crazy for feeling out of place, she continued, but I also needed to know they didn't see me that way. They didn't, I said. Not for a second. Claire reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the locket again, opened it, touched the tiny note inside. I think I want to meet her, she said, if she's still around. I nodded. Let's find out. That afternoon, I started making calls. Hospitals, legal offices, even a small social worker's office listed on one of the old letters. Took a while. Took some dead ends. But finally, a lead. Julia Hartwell, now Julia Sloan, living in Santa Fe, 61 years old, former nurse, retired. I called the number I was given. It rang 3 times. Then a voice answered. Hello? I hesitated. Hi, my name is Jake Reynolds. I believe you might have known my father, Thomas Reynolds, years ago. Silence on the other end. Then slowly, yes, I did. I cleared my throat. I'm here with my sister, Claire. Another pause. A breath. She's ready to talk, I said. The voice cracked. Put her on, please. Is it really her? Claire whispered, her voice tight as she stared at the phone in my hand. I nodded, holding it out. She looked at it like it might burn her. Then, with fingers trembling ever so slightly, she took the phone and brought it to her ear. Hi, she said. Just one syllable, but it caught in her throat. There was a pause. Then, Clara? The woman's voice, Julia's, was soft, fragile in that way that comes from carrying decades of guilt in your lungs. Claire blinked rapidly. It's Claire. I go by Claire now. Of course, Julia said gently. Of course you do. Another silence, not tense, just big, like neither of them wanted to scare it off by speaking too fast. Claire's next words came out quieter than the first. I got your letter. I've waited so long to know if you would. Claire looked up, at me, eyes wide and glassy. I gave her space. Just stepped out onto the porch while they talked, giving her the room to ask whatever she needed to ask. 15 minutes passed, then 20. When Claire came outside, she looked different. Not lighter, not heavier, just real. Like someone who'd finally stepped all the way into her own skin. She said she never had more kids, she told me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. She thought about it, but she said she knew it would always feel like a replacement. I nodded slowly. She want to meet? Claire smiled, barely. She didn't say it outright, but yeah, I think she's been waiting for that sentence her whole life. We flew out to Santa Fe 2 weeks later. Claire booked both our tickets. She didn't even ask if I wanted to come. Just sent the itinerary with a text that said, "You're coming, don't argue." The flight was early. The hotel was modest. Claire was quieter than usual, but not withdrawn, just thoughtful. She clutched a small envelope in her coat pocket the entire time. Julia's original letter, folded and refolded, soft at the creases. Julia lived in a low adobe house on the edge of town, with a white mailbox and a wind chime that caught in the breeze. When we pulled up, she was already on the porch, standing very still. Not nervous, just rooted. She wore a long cardigan, her hair pulled back into a braid streaked with silver. She looked nothing like our mother, but something in her expression, something in the way her hands stayed still, even though her eyes were filled with movement, felt familiar. Claire got out of the car slowly. She stood at the bottom of the porch steps. Julia didn't say anything. She just opened her arms. And Claire walked straight into them. They talked for hours that day. I stayed mostly on the sidelines, went for a walk, bought coffee, sat in the yard, let them build whatever they needed to build without me in the way. Julia told stories, showed old photos, explained how she met Dad, how things fell apart, how she'd kept an album Claire had never seen, tucked away in a drawer for 27 years, and Claire asked questions. Not all of them, not yet, but enough to start. That night, back at the hotel, Claire sat on the edge of her bed holding the locket. She said she used to say my name in the mirror once a year, she told me, eyes fixed on the silver charm. On my birthday, just to hear it. What did she say when you told her about Mom? I asked. Claire smiled faintly. She said thank you for loving me. The next morning, Julia gave Claire a box. It wasn't fancy, just a cardboard shoebox, taped shut, with Clara written in black marker across the lid. Inside were journals, photos, tiny letters she wrote on Claire's birthdays, and never mailed, a pressed flower, a tiny, hand-stitched bib. Claire didn't cry until we were back at the hotel, and she realized she didn't remember ever having that bib. She held it to her chest and said, "It's weird to miss something you never knew you had." We flew home 2 days later. Something had changed between us. Not dramatically, not like in movies, but there was a softness now, a quiet mutual understanding that we'd both been walking around with incomplete maps, and somehow the process of filling them in, however painful, had brought us closer. She didn't move back into Dad's house, but she visited more, helped clean it out with me, sat on the floor with me one Saturday while we went through boxes of tax documents, old photos, even a set of model trains neither of us remembered. "I think I'm finally ready to let go of the money part," she said one day, holding up a folder labeled Investment Portfolio. "Claire." "What do you mean?" "I don't need it to mean something anymore. It was never about the stocks." "No," I said. "It was about feeling chosen." She looked up. "Yeah," she said softly. "Exactly." Michael Dennison called me a month later. "There's a final document we missed," he said. "It was attached to an old version of the will, flagged for review but never discarded." "What is it?" "An addendum. A letter. Dated 4 years ago. Handwritten." He emailed it to me. It was scanned. Dad's handwriting. A little shakier, a little older. It read, "Jake, if you're reading this, then everything's gone mostly how I planned, which is a miracle in itself. I know I made mistakes. Some I can't fix. But I trust you. That's why I gave you the truth. Because you'd carry it, not weaponize it. Claire needed stability. You needed honesty. This was the only way I could give you both what you deserved. I just hope, someday, you'll both understand. I loved you. I love you still. Dad." I printed it, framed it, hung it in the hallway next to the photo of him and Mom at their anniversary dinner, her laughing, him holding up a sparkler like a doofus. Claire and I aren't perfect siblings. We still bicker. Still forget birthdays sometimes. But now we call, we show up. Last week, she told me she booked a trip back to Santa Fe, alone this time. "She invited me to spend the weekend," Claire said. "Just us. You ready?" She nodded. "I think I am." I watched her pull the locket from around her neck, open it, smile softly. She said she kept the matching one, the other half of the photo, said one day we should frame them side by side. Sounds like a good idea. Claire slipped the locket back under her shirt. "Maybe that's what family really is," she said. "Two halves of the same photo. You don't always know where the seam is, but you feel it when it lines up." I smiled, and for the first time since the will reading, I realized something. My sister had stopped smiling too soon back then. But now her smile stayed. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.